I would like to introduce Miss Liz Pollack. Miss Pollack is a psychotherapist with more than 35 years experience in her field. Her clinical interests include managing life transitions, relationship issues, trauma, and bereavement experiences. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Like Jennifer and the other panelists, I am honored to be here and to have been asked to share some information. And I think it's a nice segue from what Jennifer just shared in terms of the anticipatory, the preparation for what we know is ahead. I have some information about age-appropriate responses that children have, and I'd like just to kind of go through those things. And I do agree with everything that Jennifer said, and I can emphasize easily that everybody does experience grief in a different way. And for children, it depends a lot also on what the relationship is that they've had with this person, how good it was, if there was conflict present, how close they were, and then add to those kinds of factors, potential age and gender and their emotional state as it is. Are they a feeling, very emotional child, or are they a child that's very thoughtful? Also, are they an open child in terms of a child who shares their feelings openly, or do they tend just to keep things in anyway? So all of those kinds of factors do play a role in how they're going to experience the grief. Also, by the way, if they've had any other past losses and what those losses were like. One of the big things that Jennifer said, and I totally agree with, is I think that parents being honest with kids is critical. I also think as important as it is for parents to be honest with their feelings, what kids also need is a lot of reassurance and a lot of calm, because they're going to take their cues from their parents and other caregivers. And so let's just go ahead and plunge in with the age of baby. So we're talking 0 to 2 years of age. And basically, of course, these babies are too young to understand the concept of death, but they do understand a change in their environment. And they may perceive that, they don't have the words for it, but they may perceive it as a form of abandonment or loss. And they may feel very insecure and not knowing what's going on. They have no concept of the permanence of death, but they also have no way of communicating or understanding in any way what they're feeling. So you're probably going to see quite a bit of crying and fussy and clinging behaviors, probably a level of anxiety too, because of change, and change makes all of us anxious for the most part. So I think these babies are going to be showing some of that. You may even see it in the later part of the 0 to 2, some level of regression. So say the child had been potty trained, but then this change has happened now in their environment, and suddenly they're not using the potty, they're peeing in their pants or pooping in their pants. And so you may see some form of regression. Again, it's just the fear that's associated with the loss. The way to combat that to some degree, of course, are lots of cuddles, lots of reassurances, the showing of great love, and comforters of some sort, whether it's the baby's blanket, the pacifier, any kind of stuffed toy, anything that maybe even has the scent of the person who's gone, those kinds of things. But beyond that, just the reassurance and the support and the love, those are the 3 main aspects. Then you, of course, have the toddlers, which is the 2 to 4 age. And in this way, these little kids cannot fathom the idea that death is permanent. And so this age is very common to actually, for kids to experience what we call magical thinking. And that works in a good way, but also in a bad way. And the good way is for the kid, and I say good in terms of it gives the child hope, thinking that the person's going to come back and be alive again. And the bad thing is that they blame themselves. They think that there was something that they did or said that might have caused that. And again, let me just address that when I say good and bad. The good is also sad because obviously the person isn't coming back. But if you're a believer, you might also add to the child that someday that person would see, or the child would see that person again. So it could be something like that. But for right now, that child is not going to see that person. So I think that what's really important in this age and in the next age too, that we're going to talk about, is that the wording that parents use or caregivers use with children is really important. So the words to avoid using at this point would be, he passed away, he went to sleep, or, she'll be in a very deep and long sleep, something like that. You don't want to say those kinds of things. It's better just to say the person is gone, or even to introduce the idea of death. I know there have been some studies that actually say that to have pets in an early age can help children with the concept of life and death. I know in my own experience, I learned it early when my goldfish died, and my parents flushed the goldfish, and that might sound harsh, but I remember when they did that and they said, it's a very natural death to for a goldfish to be back in the water, and I understood that the goldfish was gone, was dead. And so using the more direct language, even though it may sound harsh to adults, it's easier for the children. And some of the things that you might see at this age, by the way, is crying, the baby or the toddler being clingy. Even tantrums are very frequent with this. You may see some withdrawal, some change in sleeping and eating habits. And like the babies that we talked about, even some regression. Once again, what we try to suggest is lots of reassurance, lots of hugging and support and showing of love. And also trying to bring into this toddler's life people who are familiar, because again, it's that change in the environment. The next age that we're going to kind of look at would be 5 to 12, and that's a pretty big range. But some of the same kinds of things are happening in this range. And one of the things that's most important is that at between 5 and 12, children are understanding better that death is permanent, and wishing that the person is alive isn't going to make it, isn't going to happen. And so very often kids are experiencing a level of anxiety, not only about the person having passed away, and I say that between us, not using that statement with kids, but also wondering about their own potential death, because they're catching on that is part of life. And they may worry about what's going to happen to me, and will I die, and those kinds of questions. And they may also be asking, who else is going to die? So they're starting to generalize that, and they're saying, who else in my life may die, and be worried that something else is going to be happening to someone that they love. So that becomes in itself a very difficult situation. And that's part of that process of them grieving. They also might say, well, where is that person now? Where's that body, that person's body, or where are they? And trying to really understand that, which is, I think that's a hard concept for adults. I know I kept trying to ask that when my grandmother died and I was 28 years old. And I'm going like, well, what does the religion say about this? What's my spirituality saying? And so it's very common that that's the next question is, where is that person or that body? So there's just so much we still don't understand about grief and what happens after death. Let's see, they could also be blaming themselves. Again, in this range, you have a lot of child developmental kinds of things happening. And one of the developmental stages, of course, is the egocentrism, where children are so focused on themselves and they think that they're sort of the center of things. And so it isn't uncommon then for children to say, well, was it something I did or something that I said? And so we really need to make sure that they understand that it wasn't them that caused any of this and that they were very loved by this person. Also, some of the signs that we can see in this age range is that children can be very distracted and forgetful. They could be very anxious and start having anxiety attacks or even panic attacks. And they may become very focused on their own physical ailments. So you may hear children talking about, oh, my tummy hurts, or I have a headache. And again, they're just that physical focus, and to some degree that takes some of the focus away from the pain and sort of gives them a new direction for their thinking. And so again, they may say, I don't want to go to school today, my tummy hurts. And they may be just feeling very insecure to go into the world and prefer to stay home with, people that they know. And it's okay to allow that on occasion, but it isn't good to necessarily have that be an all the time kind of thing. Also, children have a tendency to try to take on some responsibilities that are more adult. And again, this tends to happen in the later part of the stage. And I've heard people say, well, now you're going to have to be the man in the family, or, the mom kind of in the family. And that's an awful lot to put on kids. And so I would never, ever recommend that we do that and overpower kids or put those kinds of expectations or responsibilities, because they're still kids and they still need to be kids. And it's very natural for kids to want to assume that role. And we have to be careful that we just don't let them do that. We also may see kids withdrawing and not wanting to be social at all. And this may be because they're feeling different than their friends if their friends haven't experienced a loss in the family. And it could also be that they have no idea really how to express their own feelings. And one other thing that I want to say about this too is that it's important, again, that we offer that reassurance, a lot of support, a lot of love. And in the later stages, and I would say probably 6, 7 and up, we might want to try and involve them in some of the planning of the funeral or family rituals that you may do after a loss. Um, Definitely them going to the funeral. We don't want to force that, but I think we should try to make that as part of this is the process and this is what we do to honor them. And also, one of the things that Jennifer said, and I think this is really important, is, to provide the memories. And so, yes, having them do a scrapbook or a journal or some sort of memory book is fantastic idea. There's all kinds of things that they can do, and maybe even make some money and donate it to a cause that this person believed in or was involved in, something like that. That would be great. Maybe even helping to support ALS and the work that ALS does to help. So there's all kinds of ways that kids can feel like they're doing something. And that, I think, for all of us, when we grieve, we feel so helpless. And so giving children that opportunity, I think, is very, very helpful. Then the latter stage, the 13 and up, and again, that's a pretty broad range. But at this point, children have a much better understanding of death as being part of life. And the complication here for this age range, though, is that very often they're already dealing with puberty. They're dealing with relationship issues socially with kids at school. And physiologically, they're not thinking as clearly because of what's going on in puberty. And so there has to be some extra patience. This age range, a lot of the kids are angry a lot and feeling a lot of anxiety and angst, and they may not be very talkative. And so anything you can do to encourage discussion and let your kids know it's really okay. And even if they don't have words to describe what they're feeling, that you're there, that you understand, and that you love them. One way to connect with them is to make sure that they're eating the evening meal with you, because that's a great way of checking in with them. You may see that they're wanting to spend more time with their friends than with their family, and that's a normal reaction. It kind of gives them a respite from maybe some of the sadness in the home. And so I think it's okay to let children do that as long as you know where they're at and that you have, you feel comfortable with the parents of these children that they're playing with. There is also a tendency for teenagers to want to isolate, stay in their rooms, listen to their music, talk on the phone, those kinds of things. Again, it's hard to know how much of that is just that age and how much of it is trying to cope with loss. But that's where as much as you can to get them to talk is going to be helpful. Let's see, I'm thinking and making sure I'm not leaving something out. Oh, they are probably also going to feel socially isolated to a point, especially again, if their friends have not had these kind of losses before. So I think it's really important that that they realize that this is just a part of life. So really, that's what I have. I would recommend a great book that was just published. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And it was written by a friend of mine who's another therapist. And the name of the book is Lola and the Tree of Life. And it was written by Susan Rising, and her last name is spelled Reising, and it's Lola as Lola. And so it's Lola and the Tree of Life. And it is a beautiful book that addresses death, but does it in a very peaceful way. And if you haven't already heard of it or read it, I definitely recommend that. And I know Jennifer has some resources that she spoke of too. So I say take advantage of those kinds of resources. Check them out ahead of time to make sure that you know what would be best for your child. So again, in closing, I just thank you all. And you know, my heart is with you all.
Thank you so much, Liz. This was wonderful. We appreciate the resource that you provide as well. This was excellent. Thank you.